The most dangerous bargain in history wasn't made for power, it was made for understanding. This is lyrical alchemy, where stories older than centuries collide with the sound of modern metal. I'm Cord Henson. Let's break this bargain. The story of Dr. Faustus did not begin with Christopher Marlowe, and it certainly did not end with him either. Long before this tragedy reached the Elizabethan stage, the legend of Faustus circulated throughout European folklore as a cautionary tale about ambition, knowledge, and damnation. Over centuries, that legend has been reimagined again and again through theater, opera, poetry, film, modern novels, and even anime. From the opera Faust to contemporary music and visual storytelling, the Faustian bargain has proven disturbingly immortal. So why begin here? Why return to Marlowe's Doctor Faustus? Because this play is where the Faustian tragedy takes its first fully realized dramatic form. This is the blueprint. Every later adaptation, no matter how modern, symbolic, or abstract, owes something to the philosophical and emotional architecture Marlowe built. And while the legend has lived many lives across different mediums, the version I'm most familiar with, academically and theatrically, is the play itself. So to understand how the Faustian myth functions in music, especially in symphonic and progressive metal, we gotta start at its dramatic core. Dr. Faustus asks a question that never stops being relevant. What happens when the pursuit of knowledge becomes indistinguishable from the hunger for power? Written during the English Renaissance, the play emerges from a world in transition. Medieval religious certainty was giving way to Renaissance humanism, a philosophy that placed enormous value on human intellect, potential, and achievement. Knowledge was no longer just a path to understanding God, it was a means of reshaping the world. But this cultural shift came with fear. If humanity reached too far, what would be lost in the process? Christopher Marlowe, one of the most daring playwrights of the Elizabethan era, was uniquely positioned to explore this tension. He was educated at Cambridge and rumored to be everything from an atheist to a government spy. Marlowe wrote protagonists who refused to accept limits. His characters did not merely sin, they challenged cosmic order itself. In Dr. Faustus, Marlowe fuses Renaissance ambition with medieval morality, creating a tragedy that feels both progressive and deeply anxious. The play opens not with temptation, but with dissatisfaction. Dr. John Faustus is already a brilliant scholar, having mastered logic, medicine, law, and theology. Yet, each medium ultimately disappoints him. Medicine cannot conquer death. Law is mirrored with trivial disputes. Theology demands submission rather than transcendence. Faustus doesn't want to serve the truth. He wants to command it. This hunger leads him to necromancy, where he believes he can transcend human limitations through magic. When Faustus summons Mephistopheles, he believes himself to be the dominant force in the exchange, yet Mephistopheles makes it clear that demons are not summoned by human strength alone. They appear when souls are already inclined toward damnation. So, Faustus proposes a contract with Lucifer, 24 years of power, pleasure, and knowledge in exchange for his soul. Even as warning signs surround him, his blood congealing as he signs the pact, the appearance of the good and evil angels, and moments of sudden doubt, Faustus chooses to proceed. The contract is not forced upon him, it is entered willingly. From this point forward, the tragedy reveals itself not through Faustus's ascent, but through his gradual diminishment. Armed with supernatural power, he never achieves the enlightenment he once desired. Instead, he wastes his abilities on spectacle. He mocks religious authority, entertains nobles with delusions, and indulges in fleeting pleasures. The man who sought godlike knowledge becomes increasingly shallow, distracted, and spiritually hollow. And Marlowe makes a devastating point here. Power without purpose corrodes rather than elevates. Mephistopheles stands at the emotional center of the play. Unlike a traditional villain, he is fully conscious of his own suffering. He describes hell not as a distant place, but as a constant state of being, the eternal separation from God. His line, "Why this hell, nor am I out of it?" reveals that damnation is psychological as much as physical. Mephistopheles does not need to manipulate Faustus aggressively. Faustus is already unraveling himself. In many ways, Mephistopheles is a version of Faustus's future. Lucifer appears less frequently, but his presence is absolute. He represents authoritarian power masquerading as freedom. So whenever Faustus wavers or considers repentance, Lucifer distracts him with the spectacle. most notably through the pageant of the seven deadly sins. These figures are not merely theatrical, they externalize the vices that already rule Faustus's inner life. Temptation succeeds not through force, but through indulgence and delay. We also have the good angel and the evil angel. So these two serve as a visible manifestation of Faustus's internal struggle. They appear repeatedly, offering competing paths, repentance, and humility on one side, pride and despair on the other. Crucially, Faustus always hears both voices. His tragedy lies not in ignorance, but in repeated refusal. Each time redemption is offered, he convinces himself it is either undesirable or impossible. Late in the play, an old man appears as a stark contrast to Faustus, so he embodies humility, endurance, and faith. Unlike Faustus, the old man accepts his human limitation and trusts in divine grace. Though demons threaten him, they cannot claim his soul. His presence proves that salvation was always within Faustus's reach. The tragedy is not that redemption was denied, it is that it was rejected. As the 24 years come to an end, Faustus is finally forced to confront the weight of his choices. In the final act, time becomes his enemy. He begs for the clock to stop, for annihilation rather than eternal punishment, for any escape from the consequences he knowingly embraced. But his final pleas are driven by terror, not transformation. When midnight strikes, demons drag him to hell, and the play closes on one of the bleakest endings in Renaissance drama. The major themes of Doctor Faustus are what give its lasting power. At its core, the play is a meditation on hubris, the belief that human intellect can replace moral responsibility. It interrogates the tension between free will and predestination, repeatedly suggesting that while cosmic forces exist, Faustus is always choosing his path. Damnation is not portrayed as sudden punishment, but as a gradual psychological descent fueled by denial and despair. The play also exposes the illusion of power. Faustus believes that he is ascending beyond humanity, yet with every passing year, he becomes less fulfilled, less curious, and less alive. His tragedy is not simply that he loses his soul, but that he never becomes what he imagined he could be. Potential is squandered. Greatness collapses into spectacle. This is why the Faustian tragedy refuses to die. It speaks to every era that worships ambition, innovation, and success without asking what is being sacrificed along the way. Whether in politics, technology, fame, or art, the Faustian bargain continues to seduce those who believe that they are immune to consequence. And this is exactly why, in the new year, we are digging deep into Camelot's Epica and the Black Halo. These albums are not just inspired by the Faustian myth, they are modern symphonic metal retellings of the tragedy, translating Marlowe's philosophical nightmare into a symphonic metal format. But before we analyze the music, the characters, and the lyrics, we needed to understand the foundation. We needed to stand at the crossroads with Faustus himself. Because once you realize the bargain, you start to see it everywhere. And the question remains the same as it was in Marlowe's time. What are you willing to give up to become more than you are?